And now we've got our my favorite part of the evening is where we move on to our guest speaker, our guest presenter to wow us with their brilliance, expertise, and knowledge. And tonight we are lucky enough to have Colin Mackie with us. And I had a chat with him prior to this. Colin has been in franchising for a long time, 37 years in fact. So it's a long time in the business. He bought a franchise a long time ago, and he's been involved in every aspect of franchising, from running it, buying it, selling franchises, helping people with businesses to establish franchises when things go wrong, because let's face it, not everything goes right. Anyone's run a business knows that it's not plain sailing. But he's been in there helping to troubleshoot and fix things up when things go wrong as well too. So some of the names that you may be familiar with that Colin has worked with in the past: Donut King, so Stockland's, Tony's Kebabs, and in fact he's worked with about 70 odd franchises at one time there. Working out of an office in Brisbane, helping to find franchisees for their systems. So very knowledgeable in the topic, and just a couple of interesting facts about Colin as well too. He's always been in business. In fact, he started selling when he was 7 years old. His first job was when he was 11 years old. And he started his first business at 19 years old. So, virtually, this is like before any of us are adults. He's out there as a kid, out there in business. So he started at a young age. At 21, he owned 2 houses, his cars, and had overseas holidays. So really, that's really set him up to be the expert that he is today. He is, what else can we say about him? Enterprise 21, his business that he's got at the moment, started in 1987 as Franchise 2000. So he's been in business for a reasonably long time as well too. So I could speak about Colin a whole lot more, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let Colin tell us a wee bit more about himself. And his topic tonight is really all about helping you to discover the secrets of franchising, not so you can become a franchise, although if you do become a franchise, that is a good ticket to creating a good, successful business. But really is to help you to be more successful in business by using some of the systems that he uses with franchises to do it. So let's put our hands together and welcome along Colin Mackie.
Good evening, folks. I've got friends and associates and a couple of strangers here, so that's good. Well, franchising can be really, really, really boring. So hopefully we'll put some stuff in here that might not be so boring. So first of all, we'll share my screen, if I can do that. Here we go. Now, I don't want to make this boring, but the first bit, I'm going to give you some facts and figures because they're obviously very important. So there's lots of bad publicity about franchising. It seems to be the media just love it when one franchise system goes down the gurgler, and that's all we get on the television and the media constantly. And sadly, it's not true. So let's see if I can give you the next slide here. This slide here is 100% accurate. The red line is independent businesses. So over a 5-year period, 82% of all new businesses fail in the first 5 years. And that bottom line, unfortunately, is not quite accurate. It says there that it's 4%. The real percentage is 3%, but I just thought that's just a little bit on the low side. So I'll put it up to 4% to make it a little bit more believable. So when it comes to buying a business, do you want to buy a franchise? You want to buy an independent, do your independent businesses? That's your chance of success. You've got an 18% chance of success in your own business against 96% in a franchise business. Now, here, this here depends on what you want to do. If you're a student at university, you do a business course, you'll find that you get nothing at all about franchising, nothing. So when you come out of university and you're looking for a job, there's about 25% of the jobs nowadays are in the franchise sector. So it's important that you do know about franchising. If you're a business owner, if your business is now profitable, what are you going to do for the next step? Where are you going to go to? You can do self-funded growth, you can do licensing, or you can go franchising. Well, franchising is not for everybody either, but how do you make the decision unless you know what franchising is about? So we're not going to cover it all here tonight. We're just talking in generalities. And I notice on here and on BX when I'm on there often, there's lots of business consultants and business advisors. And I've spoken to a few in the last few weeks, and I asked them the question, what happens when you've advised a business owner and you've got the business up to a profitable stage and it's really going well? What do you advise them then? And they go, Well, if you're going to put yourself out there as a professional business advisor, surely you should know the options to help your client to go to the next stage. And if you can do that and you understand about franchising, yeah, there's a lot more extra business in it for you. So it's very important that you know it. Now, when I do my seminars, this is the first slide that I put up. This is Section 52 of the Trade Practices Act. It's now got a new title, but it's still the same act. And it's about misleading and deceptive conduct. This here is the key to franchising. You are not allowed to tell a lie. You're not allowed to exaggerate. You're not allowed to omit something. So when I'm doing seminars, I usually put this up and I say to people, look, if I say something that you doubt, please write it down. And at the end, if I can't justify what I've said, you can sue me. You can take my Mercedes. I say Mercedes because I've not got a Mercedes. But anyway, they can have the Mercedes if I had one. So that is the key to franchising, and there's lots and lots and lots of good rules in there, and lots of good stories and lots of bad stories as well. Now, I put here honesty and integrity as well, because from my own perspective, and as Nick mentioned there, I've been in business for lots and lots and lots of years, and I've met all sorts of people. And the people who do not have a sufficient level of honesty and integrity do not last long. You might make extra money in the first year, the first 2 or 3 years, but eventually that catches up with you. Business is about giving a service and being rewarded for the service. And if you're ripping people off, it's a short-term thing, and particularly in franchising. And we'll come on to some of the franchise systems that have gone down the gurgler and why they've gone down the gurgler. Right. This here is the definition, or used to be the definition, of what franchising is all about. It's being in business for yourself, but not by yourself. As Nick mentioned in his introduction there, a lot of the things that the franchisor does frees you up to be actually at the coalface making the money. And you're not on your own. You've always got somebody there to back you up. So this is Enterprise 21's definition. So it's a profitable method of marketing and selling goods or services which can be duplicated and remain viable with different owners and in different locations. Now, as a franchise consultant, we get people coming in who want to build a franchise system, and the guy is just absolutely like this, and he's just so, well, unless you can duplicate him, you're not going to have a franchise system. Sometimes it might be up in Darwin. So a franchise or a business in Darwin might be profitable in Darwin, but if you put it down in Tasmania, it won't be. So it's got to be duplicatable in different areas. And it's got to remain viable. Of course, if it's not viable, there's no point in having the business in the first place. So that's the Enterprise 21 definition. I'm only going to cover this very briefly. We tend to think that franchising's a new phenomenon. It's not. The 12th century monks, franchise collectors, monarchs, when they wanted to build a road, they offered a franchise to people. They then built the road and took a toll, and the government got paid back from it that way. The first Australian franchisor was General Macquarie. He franchised the selling of rum. Singer sewing machines was the first commercial one, but the one at the bottom there always intrigues me. In the late 1800s, Martha Harper, who was actually a Canadian, a mixed race Canadian, she was in service and she had really long hair, and she developed a tonic for doing her own hair. And she set up a franchise system, and she had 500 franchise stores around the US. So that was probably, I think, the real, as we know it, a commercial franchise. So, and today, of course, there's names everywhere. There's all sorts of franchises. I won't go through there. There's heaps of them there. Some of these, a couple of these have died in the vine. A couple of them have changed their name. There's BB's up the top. That's now Michelle's Patisserie. Kona Waters, that didn't last long for reasons. So this is just me. I just put this in here. I'll take that out again. Now, for a successful franchise to work, it is a true symbiotic relationship. The franchisor wins, the franchisee wins, and the customer wins. If somebody of those three is not equally winning, it's not a franchise system. I had a young fellow came and asked if he could ghost me for 3 months. He was from Bonn University and he was doing his thesis for his master's degree on franchising. And he discovered that Australian franchises were the most successful in the world. So he came over here to find out why. So he ghosted me for 3 months. And when he was ready to leave, I asked him what his conclusion was. And it was the fact that in Europe, when they build a franchise system, they get their profit on selling the franchise. Whereas in Australia, we get our profit by taking a little bit all the time by supporting, encouraging, making the franchisee a little bit more profitable. So in Australia, we make our profits on the long term, not in the short term. And I think that really works. Just a little aside, can you guess what is the most franchised country in the world? New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
Has more franchises than anywhere else. So here's some quick stats for you. There's 1,100 franchise systems. That's 3 times more than in the USA per ratio. We've got 80,000 franchise outlets. 460,000 people, 500,000 people are employed in the franchise sector. 91% of all the franchises in Australia are Australian owned. And there's actually quite a few Australian franchises out around the world. I was in Chicago not long ago, and it was Cartridge World under those. You've seen all the gangster movies in Chicago under the railway overpass thing, and there was in there was one of these Cartridge Worlds. So we do very well. We built a franchise system and we sold the master to. It was a dog wash in California. 7-Eleven's got the most number of outlets. Subway's got 42,000. McDonald's with a franchise system. What I've discovered as well as I go around the world, not every McDonald's sells the same stuff. When I'm in Thailand, there's some beautiful chicken and rice dishes, and my best breakfasts in Hong Kong, they have a beautiful porridge. And it's an oatmeal porridge, not a rice porridge. So that's some of the statistics. So why would you go franchising? If you're going to look at self-funded growth, you need lots of capital, you need lots of staff, you've got related problems, you've got slower expansion. If you go under licensing, you have less control, less brand recognition, less uniformity. On this licensing, I'll just stop there for a second. A couple of months ago, a fellow on the Sunshine Coast asked me to come up and see him. He wasn't sure whether he wanted to go franchising or not. He had a business where he was going out there doing installations of electrical stuff, and he had 17 staff. And he also mentioned he had 32 agents, and he didn't understand why he would need to go franchising. So we did a little valuation on the business, and I was struggling to get the value of the business up to about $500,000 maximum. His agents were just agents. They weren't branded. They didn't go out there under his brand. They didn't wear his uniforms. They didn't have his cars. So as agents, licensed agents, they weren't worth anything. So as we started to discuss this and said, if these were all franchises, what would your business be worth? And as I mentioned this, he says, hang on a minute here. He says, Officeworks had just bought a business exactly like that with 42 franchises, and they paid over $40 million. So you can be independent, and that's what your business is going to be worth. If you've got a franchise system and you've done it properly, you've got a very valuable asset. And there's lots of existing franchise companies out there who are looking for good, profitable franchise systems to bring in. If you look at Retail Food Group, they have their training centers, they have their marketing departments, so they share that over, I think they're up to 5 or 6 different franchise systems now. So they're sharing the costs. So once you've got one franchise system, it's easier to bring on second. So if you can build your business into a franchise, you've got a market for it. So with franchising, you've got control, uniformity, bulk buying power, brand recognition, etc., etc. So I thought rather than give you facts and figures, I would give you a couple of stories to me that really highlight franchising. Now, this is a true story. And because it's a true story, I've changed his name. I've got his name up there as Mike. It was really Ken, but to protect his identity, we'll call him Mike, okay? So this was early on in my franchising, and a company who was into property maintenance asked me if I would help them find franchisees. So I was in Bundaberg at the time. I placed some ads. This guy came along, very smart, as it says, everything there was about this fellow, really nice guy. He signed a confidentiality agreement, took away all the confidential documents, and he came back on the Monday, handed me it back and said, I'm not buying this because I can do it myself. I says, what do you mean? He says, well, it's 40,000. He says, I've just done a costing here and I can do it all for 20,000. I says, surely not. He said, yeah. So he showed me and he'd done all his homework and I didn't have the answer. So he set up his own property maintenance business. The truck, the sign writing, the uniform, he'd copied it virtually 100% from this franchise and he'd signed a confidentiality agreement. However, I wasn't going to sue him. He and I remained friends for the next few years. We went golfing on Sundays and I could see that the guy was hardworking, definitely. So he came to me 3 years later and said, I want to sell the business. I said, okay, what do you want for it? He says, I want to sell it for 60,000. So that wasn't over the top because I knew that he put in lots of long, hard hours. But I said, I need to see your profit and loss so that I can actually do a proper valuation on it. So the first year, he lost 10,000 the first year, he lost 15,000 the second year, and he lost another 10,000 the third year, right? So he hadn't made a profit. So I says, well, how on earth am I going to sell this for $60,000 when you made $35,000 loss in 3 years? What am I supposed to say to people? He says, well, I'm going to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes as I've made. So when they buy the business, I'll tell them what not to do. So the first year, he decided to advertise his business and he partnered with New Steel Homes. New Steel Homes, the television company, were coming along and they were filming every day as the building was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And one of the commitments was that Ken had to go in there and man the place on a Thursday. So that was one day a week that he wasn't there. It wasn't cheap to get into this either. And he never made 1 cent, but it cost him 1 day a week for 6 months. And it cost him the amount of money to get in there. So why did you lose your money the second year? What was your reason the second year? Well, that was when they were aggregating the televisions and everybody had to get a new aerial. So he thinks to himself, because he's a smart guy, he says, I've got a van, I've got a ladder. I'm actually an electrician to trade. I could do this myself. So he then starts going away and investigating that market. He eventually finds a manufacturer in China. He orders a whole container load of aerials. By the time this has all happened, down here, just, I forget the name of the place, just below Beenleigh, there was a company there and they were brilliant. They were like a herd of locusts. They just moved right up the coast of Queensland. Leaflets, letterbox drops, television, radio, the whole lot. So by the time Ken's aerials arrived in Brisbane, these people were up in Cairns. So being the kind of guy he was, he knocked on every door, but for some strange reason, nobody wanted 2 aerials. So he had to sell the aerials that he had at a bargain basement price. So he wasted all that time and all that money. The third year, his reason for losing it was that we were in the Rotary Club and he felt there was no kudos in running his business from home. So he decided to rent an office. So he got an office on the outside of the shopping centre. Luckily, it was on the outside of the shopping centre, which meant he could close on Saturday afternoons and Sundays, but he had to man the office. He put a woman in it first, no extra business at all. So he would sit in there for hours. Now, just think about this logically. Would you be walking down the street in Bundaberg and say, oh, look, there's a property maintenance shop. I think I'll go and have one of those. It's not an impulse buy, it's a destination. So it doesn't matter. They wouldn't go to you. Even if you had an office, they're not going to go there. They'll find you. In those days, it was a thing called Yellow Pages. They would find you there. So that was why he made the losses. So he had a total disaster, yet he wanted me to sell this for 60,000, which was impossible. What were the lessons that we learned here? Had he spent $40,000 and bought a franchise system, and he wanted to go advertising, the franchisor would have said, why? There are 16 real estate agents in the Bundaberg area. You and your wife make a date and go out every Friday with a different real estate agent, and you'll build up a lovely relationship. You'll have a nice meal every Friday, and you won't need to advertise. So I'm not allowing you to do that. The franchisor would have said no. When it came to the aerials, they would have said, I'm sorry, you would be in breach of your franchise agreement. You're not an aerial installer. You're a property maintenance guy. And when it came to the office, they would have said exactly the same. Tell me how many people have you been to your office so far? None. Well, that's the same number that will come to your new office. So he was very smart and he saved $20,000. But he actually sold his business for $10,000 because it was a second-hand van. And he'd wasted all these years of doing nothing. If he'd bought a franchise, he would have been into profit mode probably within 3 to 6 months. So there's a very interesting, how are we doing for time? I don't have a clock here.
Yeah, you're all good, Colin. It's
okay, good.
10 to at the moment.
Okay, well, this is another story. I believe that stories get the message across better. I got a call from Sydney from Mr. Whippy. You remember Mr. Whippy vans? They haven't had vans on the road for years and years and years. They got rid of the vans, they sold them off, and they had shops, and they were doing quite successfully. Mr. Whippy is owned by a company called 40 in the UK, and they manufacture ice cream powder, and they decided to verticalize the industry by selling the ice cream powder direct to the public. So they set up these shops, and they were quite successful. But all of a sudden, along came a franchise system called Wendy's. Sorry, yeah, Wendy's. So they were pink. Mr. Whippy's pink, slightly darker shade of pink. The ice creams, Mr. Whippy, I thought was a nicer ice cream. The prices were the same. But a little industrial espionage showed that the Wendy's ice creams were outselling the Mr. Whippy by 2 and 3 times. And they couldn't understand why. So they flew me down. And in those days, I used to get a measly $1,000 a day for my advice. And I listened to everything they said, and then I came back and I gave them the report that the reason that the problem was there was that Wendy's were franchised and you weren't. So they said, no, that's not true. That's not rubbish. We don't believe you. So if we go back a little stage, in the food court in Bundaberg, there was a Wendy's ice cream shop there. And I used to sit in the food court and I would watch all the shops. That's what I do. I like to absorb as much information as I can. And I would watch that shop, and somebody would come up to the counter and the woman's head would appear from round the back. She's sitting in there reading the Women's Weekly. Oh no, not another customer. No, will it go away? Yes, that was her attitude. And then the only time that she ever brightened up was when it was relatives coming in. Here you are, darling, here's an ice cream for you, here's an ice cream for you, here's an ice cream for you. So the Whippy phoned me back a year later, said, come down, we've decided that we're going to sell off the worst stores. Now, this is a good lesson for everybody in business on all sorts of things. He said, we're going to sell off our worst stores. They had 30 odd stores. And he says, we don't believe you. So he says, we're not in this to make money. We want you to sell these at the written down plant and equipment value. So I think the cheapest one was $15,000 up to about $30,000. And we're talking the equivalent at that time of a Wendy's, which would have been $250,000. So one of my jobs was then to sell these. So I went to the lady in Bundaberg and I said, I've got good news and I've got bad news. Oh, what's the bad news? I says, well, the bad news is that I'm going to sell this shop. I've been instructed to sell it. Oh, no, I'll have a job. I says, but the good news is you can buy it. No, I can't buy it. I've not got any money. I says, of course you have. I says, I have done a little research. Your husband was paid off and the money that you received, you bought a nice house. You've got lots of equity in your house and I'll show you how to do it. So anyway, I think I sold 18 of the stores like that to the actual people who worked in the store. Now, if you go back to that little slide that I showed you at the front about section 52, not one of those stores didn't double in turnover. Some tripled and one quadrupled. Why? The same shop, the same product, the same price, the same person behind the counter. Why did they double? Why did they triple? Attitude. This lady now never read that Women's Weekly again. Anytime I was in there, she's out there, she's polishing the glass, doing this. She's got something to lose. No matter how good your manager is, they've got nothing to lose except their job, and usually they can go and get another job. When you're expanding your business and you're going to do it with staff, every time you open another outlet, you have lots of headaches. Lots of headaches. Another quick little story, Donut King and BB's. BB's had a beautiful shop in Brisbane Centre, but they had a problem with the franchisor and a dispute, so the head office took it back. It was turning over at that time 22,000 a year as a franchised operation. When they took it over as management, it went down to 16, right? And the management are the people who do the training. So why you would think, we're going to say they're the managers, they should do better than anybody else. Then it was my job to try and sell this. And somebody comes along and I say, well, it's doing 16, but you'll get it up to 22, 24. But see, but why would that happen? Because it's being run by the management. Surely the management is better. The moral of the story is no matter how good your management is, it's never any better, never better than somebody who has got something serious to lose. And that's the reason that franchising works more than anything else. They've got more to win and they've also got more to lose. So that's Mr. Whippy's story. Greed and the fear of loss, attitude and commitment, these are the things that differentiates franchisees from, they've got a fear of loss. They've invested 200, if it's a what do you call it, a coffee club, they might have invested $800,000. So invested $800,000. I can't be bothered getting my bed today. I don't think so. If you've invested that amount of money, you're there, you never have another sick day in your life. So that's the reasons that franchising works, is commitment, dedications, and they're stimulated. Now, franchisor skills, you've got to have management skills, technical skills, and sales and marketing skills. Most of the franchise systems that I've built and been associated with have had 3 directors, and they've had those skills. They've been smart enough. One's a very good manager, one's got the technical skills. Sales and marketing is probably the most important of all the skills. You can have the best product in the world, you can have the best management system in the world, but if you not get any customers, it doesn't mean anything. So as a franchisor, you have to have those 3 skills, and nobody has those 3 skills. You might be a great manager and you'll have an entrepreneurial flash, or you might have a little bit of a talent in sales and marketing, but you have to be certain that you have someone that you can bring in. If you don't have those skills, that you bring someone in who does have them. Why do franchise systems fail? Well, funnily enough, we're still back to that greed. dishonesty, ego, partnerships, and stupidity. Franchise systems do fail, and they're no different to other types of partnership businesses. I saw a very good franchise business going down the gurgler, and you'll not believe the reason. The rubbish bin. One of the franchisors wouldn't put the rubbish bin out, and the other franchisor got his knickers in a twist. That's not my job. I'm not putting the rubbish bin in. Bill's supposed to be. But he didn't say to Bill. He didn't say anything to Bill. He just let this build up and build up and build up until there was a huge conflict. And by the time the conflict came, the animosity between the two of them was too far gone that they couldn't repair it. So that was a good franchise system down the gurgler because lack of communication on the thing. And partnerships, of course, are very, very dicey. So this is what happens, unfortunately. This is the reason we're talking about here is why franchisors fail. And I've heard this said numerous times. When a franchise system gets really big, the franchisor would say, this would be really great if we didn't have those idiot franchisees to bother about. Well, they didn't have idiot franchisees in the first place. They wouldn't have a business in the first place. But that's egos that get in there. I can go on here. I've got loads of stories there, but we've not got time to do that. There's a quick one at the bottom, that partnerships, Ralph. I was in LA and I was at a shopping centre, and there was a kiosk outside the shopping centre at the car park area. And this big flashy car comes round, stops the car outside this thing, and this guy's on, bow tie, black pants, and he speaks to the lady, and the lady walks into the centre. Next thing is somebody comes round and drives the car around the corner. So I wonder what's going on here. So I followed them round, and at the bottom of the car park, they had a car wash. So the customer drives into the shopping centre, leaves her keys, goes and does her shopping. The car goes round the back, gets washed and detailed. Then when she comes out again, he calls round the back, Mrs. Smith, bring Mrs. Smith's car round. So while the car's coming round, he's saying, here, yeah, Mrs. Smith, here's your bill. By the way, your wiper blades need replaced. There's a tyre bald in the back, whatever. You want us to fix those the next time you're round. So when the car comes out, they put the stuff in the back. So anyway, I decided to do that here. So I set up and I went into partnership with a guy who had a mobile car wash named Ralph and a bank manager who had lots of money. So we set this up. We set the first one up at Redcliffe, and it was highly successful and it was going well. It was going so well that Westfield approached me and asked me if I could put one in 32 shopping centres. A couple of weeks later, I get a phone call. And this guy says, hello, Mr. Mackie. He says, I don't think you know me, but he says, I work up in the car wash up at Redcliffe. And he says, I've got a problem. I said, what's the problem? He says, Ralph makes us come in half an hour earlier every day. We come in half an hour earlier every day to do prayer meetings. I says, seriously? He says, yeah, we've all got to pray and sing hymns every morning. So I called an executive meeting and I explained it. You just cannot do that. So this guy just wouldn't understand that it was against the law to do that, for one thing. And he then started to assume that I was an agent of the devil, that I was here to destroy his life. So one of us had to leave, and luckily it was me. So anyway, that's just the example of the kind of franchise problems that you have. Right, somebody always asks me, and I've written, I don't know, we haven't mentioned the book that I wrote, which is called The Quantum Leap, Owning Your First Business. And people ask me all the time, what do you need to be successful in business? Well, it's easy. You got to be in the right place at the right time with the right idea, with the right amount of money, and you got to have the right amount of support. You got to know everything about everything. You got to know about marketing and management and sales and productivity and sourcing. It's very easy to be successful in business. Super, really easy, easy. In franchising, these are the skills, and you alluded to these earlier too, Nick, the skills that you need to have in your business to be successful. That's some of the things that you need to know as a business owner. If you don't know those things, you're going to get into trouble. As a franchisee, really all you need is sufficient funds, desire and enthusiasm. You understand the franchise philosophy, a positive mental attitude, and the spouse or partner the partner support, that is actually very, very important. When we were selecting franchisees for companies, the guy would be all enthusiastic and he wants to proceed, and I'd say, no, I'll come and visit you at home. And you'd go home and the wife's sitting over there, or the vice versa, the husband's sitting over there with his back to the table watching the television, and he'd say, excuse me, George. Yeah. Would you like to come across and join us? No, it's her business. I'm not having anything to do with it. It's her idea. Well, that was the end of the interview. I wouldn't just slam the book down and walk out, but that was the end of the interview. You would know yourself when you go into a new job. It's always very stressful. There's always stress. So in a franchise, it's very stressful. So if you're not getting the support and backup that you need, you won't be successful in your franchise business either. Now, as I've said once or twice, franchising is not for everyone. Out of all the franchise systems that I've helped, I think it's worth noting that I've only met 2 people that I would say were dishonest. I've lots of incompetent people and lots of over-enthusiastic people, but I've not seen, and lately it's too difficult to become a franchisor if you're not honest, or if you have a dubious background. If you're there just to make money, you won't last long at all. You have to have a dream to take your product or your service out to the world. And where we're up to, whether you're building a franchise, working in sport, because I've always said, remember both reasons why people consider franchising. There's positives and negatives. So I'm not going to go into that there. And I don't suppose here that many people are interested in building a franchise, but if we go back to the very first slide, where only 4% of franchise businesses fail against 82, what is it that franchise systems are doing that independent businesses aren't? Well, they're doing lots of things, but there's lots of them that you could incorporate in your business. I've opened 4 businesses for my wife. And in every instance, I had one up in Ipswich where the kids were going to school, and we opened the store, and the very first morning, people walk in and say, oh, is this a franchise system? Why would they assume it was a franchise system? It was just an ice cream, donuts and coffee store. Why would they assume it was a franchise? Because it had a feel. Franchise systems look professional. The names, the signage, the uniforms, everything, all the little pieces all fit together. So if you've got a business or you're starting a business, just have it in your mind. Even if you don't ever want to go franchising, just consider the fact that you might go franchising and put everything into your business that you would as a franchise system. Obviously, operations manual, systems, everything that you need to do. The benefits of a franchise system, well, obviously you've got market dominance. You go into a shopping centre, there's an independent donut shop and there's a Donut King, you'll always go to Donut King. We're sheep. We get brainwashed. With all franchises, or not all franchise, most franchise systems, you have to pay a royalty or a service fee. We don't use the word royalty. And in Donut King, it's 7%. So if the average turnover for a Donut King is $20,000 and it's 7% service fee, that's $1,400 a week that you're taking out the till and giving to the franchise. So that's a lot of money. That's a heck of a lot of money. However, what I did once was I sat down and I worked out the benefits of the bulk purchasing, the donut mix, the fondants, the milk, the coffee, and it worked out very, very close to the 7%. So you might be losing 7% on the service fee, but you're gaining it back on the other side, and the franchisor sitting in the middle, and everybody's winning. That's what it's all about, is you're building. It's a win-win situation. Right, business expansion options. So a lot of people say, oh, we're consolidating or we're treading water. Well, they're not, they'll go backwards. Because if the minute you stop saying I'm going forward, all your competitors, they're keeping going forward. So by default, you're slipping back. So if you're in business, you should never stop and consolidate. You need to keep moving forward. Franchising, licensing. I get lots of people who say to me now they don't want to go franchising, and it's because they really don't understand franchising and they don't understand the benefits of franchising. There was a carpet cleaning license system in Sydney about 2 or 3 years ago. They had 23 licensees. One of the licensees got his knickers in a twist and went to the lawyer. The lawyer's looking at the license agreement. Halfway through the license agreement, he says, "This is a franchise." The guy says, no, I bought a license. The lawyer says, "I'm not fussy what you bought." He says, "This document here, it's asking you to do this, this, and this, so it's a franchise." So the poor licensor got sued under the franchise code because he wasn't complying with the franchise code. So if you're going to go licensing, you've got to be very, very careful of where that line is. And the line between a franchise and a license is very ambiguous. And as much as if you go to 20 lawyers, you'll get 20 opinions. So what you do, if you're going to go licensing, make sure that your documents are all franchise approved documents. You can call it a license as well. So you can have agencies and distribution channels. I've just had a business in America there where I had agents and distributors, and unfortunately there's a lack of commitment. Another product comes along that they think is easier to sell and you're put to the side, so you have nothing there to fall back on. These are just some truisms. The sign behind me here, that's Little Boys Workshops. I was called into a franchise system that was really struggling. They had 32 franchises. Everybody was dissatisfied, and they asked me to come in and sort it out. So in a 30-month period, I grew it from 32 franchises to 207. I increased the turnover at every franchisee by 100%. I doubled the turnover, and the franchise cost went up from 19 to 32,000. And the reason was these Little Boys Workshops that you see behind me there. They help people to understand the negative self-talk that we all have. No, I couldn't do that. I hate selling. No, I'm really just a checkout chick. I shouldn't be a bit, whatever the negative thoughts are. So that's how we help those people. So these things here that are written here, be a good salesman, not a great one. I'm not going to go into define all these things, but these are all very interesting and they need to be discussed in depth. So we're up to the question time. So anybody got any questions you'd like to throw?
Feel free to unmute yourself. I can see Mark with his hand up.
Yeah, Colin, I have a colleague through BX and who's in a franchising system. And just from looking at what they're doing, that individual's really not getting the assistance that they should be from that franchise. What would you recommend?
Oh, well, it really needs a proper sit down, and it might take a week to go through and find out actually what the problems are. But the systems are, that's why you have an operations manual. The operations manual starts off by unlock the shop, open the door, turn the close sign to open sign. Every single aspect of the business, from opening the door all the way through to serving the customers. But just having it in an operations manual isn't sufficient either. There's no point. In fact, I've done it. I've gone into, again, sorry, I keep using Donut King, but I went into a Donut King one day and I said, "Can I have a look at your operations manual?" "Oh, I don't know where that is." "Oh, I wouldn't know it." And it took them about 10 minutes to find it, and they eventually found it on top of a cupboard, and it was sticky with all the fumes that had come off the donut robot. Nobody had ever looked in the damn thing. And of course, nowadays you're online. So having an operations manual isn't the final answer. You have to have an operations manual, but you also have to make sure that people use it. And you need to come up with, and again, with operation manuals online, we can do that. We can actually make sure that we know that every franchisee has been on there and looked at something in there. So that is one of the main things there, Mark. They said we'd have to go and look and sit down and go through and find out what the problem is and fix it. Just a slight aside on that, company contacted me. It was, what do you call them, a personal trainer. and they had 120 personal trainers out there, that they'd reached this stagnation point and they couldn't sell anymore. So they called us in and we did what we did. We cost them $20,000, but we discovered what the answer was. And the answer was it was two brothers that owned this, and they decided at the beginning that one was going to be a good cop and one was going to be a bad cop. But the bad cop was too bad and nobody liked them and they hated him with a passion. And just the whole business was ready to collapse in a heap. So every franchise system, and probably independent businesses too, you come in, you've got an idea, you build the business up and it's going like a rocket, and then it starts to plateau. Now, when any business plateaus, you need to say what's going wrong here. In franchising, it's usually because the guys that start the franchise off are very entrepreneurial. They've got all the enthusiasm. But when you get up to 30, 40, it depends on the type of business you're. When you get up to a certain number of franchises, you need different skills and you need to bring in the talent that you've not got. So with these people, Mark, I would suggest that they pay me, we'll drop it down for them. We'll give them really cheap, maybe. But we need to sit down and talk with them.
Okay, thanks, Colin.
Anybody else got a question?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Hello, Tiger. You've got a question?
Oh, thanks, Colin. Just want to ask what the
we can't hear you. You're frozen.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Just wanted to say thank you very much for including me tonight. What is the average entry price of some of those aforementioned food franchises that you spoke about?
Food franchises, the largest factor of obviously is the fit out of the shop. If you, again, we're just going to use a Donut King or a Michelle or any of those type of franchises, the fit out, and the fit out is also dictated mostly by the shopping centre. You might want to put in a cheaper laminate. The shopping centre won't let you put in a cheaper laminate. They will tell you the actual finishes that they want on there. So a refurbishment of a donut shop's probably around about the $300,000 mark. So that's just for the shop. And then you've got your training, and then you've got, and the cost of sales. When you're selling a franchise, these types of franchises have done the costing. It was costing $60,000 to find a franchisee, just to find a franchisee. That was advertising, talking to 20 people who were no good, and then eventually selecting the last one. Food franchises, there's a few coming on the market that are sort of trailer based. They're still around the over $100,000. I think there's a coffee van franchise that's about $140,000 for a van with a coffee machine in it. So not cheap.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the recruitment fee, because I'm from a recruitment background, and that sounds about right for the cost of finding even a middle level manager around the 50K to 100K mark.
Yeah, that's right. So it's the same with franchises. You've got to go through the whole system to find the right kind of people. Unfortunately, what happens, and again, I won't mention this word this time, but there's one of the systems, it was about 4 years ago, this guy who was the managing director of a big food franchise system. Hi, Col, how's it going? Come over. Can you come back? We need you. Why? He says, we're in trouble. I said, what's the trouble? He says, we're just hiring anybody that's got the money and the breath. And he says, we're just having major problems. I'm not mentioning the name of that franchise system, but you probably know the one. It got lots of publicity, and that was one of the reasons. And the reason for that was because they then lost the vision. It had been a privately owned company, and they understood that it was a symbiotic relationship. But the minute there were shareholders involved, the shareholders are only interested in profit. So the whole focus of that business was on to give shareholders bonuses, and the poor franchisee was just treated as a milking machine. So
great. Thanks, Colin. Well, I won't take up any more of your time,
okay.
But thank you for answering that.
No worries.
You manage business relationships in a fantastic manner. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else got something to say?
Yeah, I've got a question, Colin. In terms of like small business that may consider a franchise or may just want to set up their business in a franchise-like manner, where do they start, and what are the things to really do to get started with it all?
Well, I'm working with 3 different businesses at the moment who've all got good franchise potential. Up in Darwin, 2 years ago, I went to the markets, and this guy had a stand there, and he was selling ice cream, you know, the cold rock ice cream, and he was making it into curls and putting it in bowls. And it was the busiest stand there. There was 4 people working, and there was never less than 4 people at each of these bays. So that was 16 people. And I sat there for an hour and a half watching this, and the minimum sale was $8.50. So you multiply that out, that was a lot of money. So when it quietened, I went and spoke to the fellow. I says, is this a franchise? He says, no. He says, nobody up here knows anything about franchising. So that's 2 years ago. We're still not ready to franchise because he just came with a truck with all his stuff on the truck. You can't sell a franchise like that. It needed to be a trailer. So he's now built 2 trailers, and I've gone through the process with him, helping him to do all of those things. So now and then I wanted to know whether or not it would be profitable, not at a marketplace. So I've had him now setting up his little trailer in various places, and it's very profitable everywhere. We've built, or he's built, a 2-bay and a 4-bay, and the 2 bays are in such a way that you can either put them back to back or side by side, depending on the market stalls. That will be divided up into territories with markets in it. So there's lots of people, and we've got somebody here, I'm not going to say who it is, we've got somebody on here today who's got a brilliant product, or a range of products that would lend themselves beautifully for franchising. It's not just a matter of saying, good, let's franchise. And there's lots of things we have to talk about: the costs, the bulk purchase, the training, the selection of the franchisees, the territories that are involved. And it also always has to be profitable at the end. Everybody has to win. So it can be a built, well, again, just 2 guys came in to see me. they came into the office, they had the tank tops on, they had the hats round the wrong way, and they had tattoos in my flashy office up in Brisbane. And I think, oh dear. Anyway, I got to speak to these 2 guys, and they were really nice guys, brothers in their late 20s, and they had a dog wash, and they wanted to franchise it. So when I saw what they were doing, and they did have some things that were unique, we built it into a franchise system. We sold the first 11 franchises for them. We also mentioned earlier, they sold this franchise into America, and then they later sold it for $6 million. Well, you tell me of an independent dog wash that's going to sell his business for $6 million? It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And even if they were independent, they wouldn't sell it for $6 million because there's too many headaches. You'd have all these dog wash people out there causing millions of problems, not turning up for work one day. So there is a process that you go through, and the process always has to, the first thing that I do, and I'm different from other consultants, I'm not a lawyer or an accountant, I'm a salesman, I'm a marketing guy. Now, there's no point in building a franchise system unless there's a market for the system. That's the very first thing you look at. If you go to a lawyer, he's not interested. He just wants to sell you his $20,000, $40,000, $60,000 franchise construction package. He's not interested whether there's a market for your business when you're finished. If you look in the franchise directory, there's over 1,000 franchise systems, and I bet you there's a fairly decent percentage of them got no franchises. So there's no point in building a franchise unless first thing you determine is whether there's a market for your business once you've built it. So that's probably where you really start.
All right. Any other questions for Colin?
Yeah, Colin. Hi, David here. I just had. Can you hear me all right? Yeah.
Yes, perfectly.
Great. I just had a question around when the franchisor decides to take back the franchise.
Right. Yeah.
Because I've heard of that happening before, when a head office says, okay, one particular location or area is doing really well, and they just take it back.
Now, they can't just take it back. They can't just take it back.
Yeah, that's my question.
One of the things we should probably clarify, people used to say to me, oh, this franchise agreement, it's all in favour of the franchisor and it's not here for the franchisee. Well, that's actually wrong. A franchise agreement, a good franchise agreement, is 20% in favour of the franchisor, 20% in favour of the franchisee, and 60% in favour of the system. The system has to be protected. That's because that's what everybody's spending their money on. The franchisors develop the system. The franchisee's buying the system. If you buy a donut king and the guy next door wants to sell banana cake and whatever, selling pot on the side, well, that's detrimental to the franchise system. A franchisor cannot just decide that he's going to take back a territory. There must have been something in the franchise agreement that gave him the right to do that, because franchise agreements are super tight. Have you got one example?
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, oddly enough, and this is going back 25 years, but it was a McDonald's I used to work for when I was 15 years old, and it was a franchise when I worked there, and years and years and years later, when I went back there, I was talking to one of the managers. I was still there, and he said, "Oh yeah, no, head office took it back. You know, the guys that you used to work with, they used to run it, don't run it anymore." And I said, "They took it back. Like, how did that happen?" But you know, I don't know the ins and outs of it. But yeah, McDonald's head office somehow took it back, and like I said, I don't know the details. But
okay, well, every franchise agreement has to have a term on it, and usually in food franchises, it's a 5 by 5 by 5 by 5. Because if you're going to invest in a McDonald's and you're going to invest $1 million, you want more than 5 years to get your money back. To get a return on your investment, it takes more than 5 years. So they usually have a 5 by 5 by 5 by 5. 20, because if they get 10 years down the track, everything, especially if you're in a franchise system that's got technology involved, the technology changes in 5 minutes. And what you've got here as a system this year is not there next year. So McDonald's also, and I don't know that specific case, but McDonald's also, most of their profits come because they own the property. They buy the property or they build the property and then they rent it out to the franchisees.
okay,
So they have a second level there at the end of the 5-year term. The franchise has to be automatically renewed to the franchise agreement at that time, not then. That's why they have 5 by 5, because they have to be able to alter it. And the franchisee may well have been in breach, and because you can't just arbitrarily take it off. My brother owned a franchise for 25 years, and when he reached 70, the franchisor said, "We want you to sell." So they gave him 2 years to sell, and during that 2 years, he had 3 people came along to buy the franchise. But because it was a franchise, they had to go to head office for approval. When they went to head office for approval, head office sold them a new franchise system.
What?
Yeah. So at the end of the 3 years, or the 2 years, I think it was, at the end of the 2 years, they said, "I'm sorry, you've been operating now for 2 years. Your franchise expired 2 years ago. I'm sorry, off you go." So that was the end of him after that. So yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, so would that be, in some examples, would it be like a clause in the franchise agreement that would say after after X amount of years, or 5 or 10 years or whatever it might be? So I've never seen a franchise agreement before. Would there be something in there that says head office or the franchisor reserves the right basically to they would have to obviously purchase back that particular franchise or that territory?
That's right. It has to be very clear. Yeah, it has to be written in there somehow. And the guy, I don't know, as I say, without knowing the case particularly, his lawyer has obviously ill-advised him. One of the things that happens a lot is, which I mentioned earlier, and again the same would happen with McDonald's, is that there's a refurbishment clause in there. Now, depending on the type of McDonald's, we could be talking $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 for a refit. Now, again, from an accountancy point of view, I've been in business all my life, and you used to be able to write down certain things at the end of the year. Well, that tax relief you get, people just used to spend it. It's not. That tax relief that you get is to buy the new equipment that you need. And it may well be that at the end of the 5 year, and he's got a refurbishment clause in there, and it's going to be $600,000. He says, no, I don't want to do that. So if he doesn't want to do that, the franchisor will take it back. And if he was a good franchisee, they'll give him a job as a manager. They wouldn't give him a job as a manager unless he was good. But
yeah, what happens if the franchisee doesn't want to fork out the cash for refurbishment, and the franchisor doesn't want to take over the franchise? What happens then?
In that situation, and if we're just talking maybe shopping centres, so the shopping centre lease, and that varies a lot. Sometimes the franchisor holds a head lease, and sometimes the franchisee holds a head lease. And again, sorry, I'm just using Donut King as an example, but you know, they've got 250 stores and they've got the head lease for all those stores, and the rent's probably, if you added up the rents in all those shopping centres, that's a huge liability that we've got around their neck. They used to have master franchisees, and the master franchisee, he held the responsibility for the leases. Now they turn it around, they don't want to have that liability. So if there's a refurbishment clause and it's in the franchise agreement, it will also be in the lease of the shopping centre. The shopping centre will also. So the guy's got a Donut King there, it's coming up to refurbishment, and the shopping centre dictate, you have to do this. Donut King will give the designs. They'll decide on the quality of the stuff that's to go in there, and it's 700,000. I'm exaggerating a bit there on a Donut King, but the franchisee has a choice. They can either refurbish and get another 5 year lease, or he can walk away. And if he walks away, he owns the plant and equipment, but he won't get much for a second-hand donut robot and a refrigerator. He owns the stuff in there. So that does happen, but it doesn't happen often. I mean, I've spoken to Westfield, and the guy that looked after Queensland told me that he's only ever had that 3 times in 20 years. Whereas at the end of the lease, they have taken the centre. The centre have taken it back. And the franchisor doesn't want to take it back seriously. As I've said earlier, every franchisor knows that if they put it under management, it's going to be a major headache. So it's not something they want to do at a choice.
All right. Well, I think we are sort of getting towards time now. So there's probably some more questions there. And hopefully tonight has sort of raised some more questions as well too. Are you, if people want to get in touch with you, Colin, what's the best way to do it?
Well, enterprise21.com.au. You'll get me there easily enough. And my email is dead easy. It's CSL Mackie, C for Colin, SL Mackie. The SL stands for super long, because I have a really long memory. I can remember everything. So it's CSL Mackie at Hotmail. You'll get me there easy.
Excellent. All right. And do go onto Colin's website as well too. I think you've got your book for sale there too.
Yeah, there's books for sale. And on this, are you going to cover the prizes in a minute?
Yep.
Okay, I'll mention them later.
All right. Well, actually, why don't we go into that now? So
okay,
you do have a prize up today. So tell us about that.
We've got 2 prizes for you. These workshops at the back here are brilliant workshops for people who are suffering a little bit from negative self-talk. I can't do this. I'm too old. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. I'm too ugly, whatever. Or I hate public speaking. There's no way I could speak in public. That negative self-talk really restricts us. So I've decided now that these were designed for franchise systems, but the success rate was so good. So we're launching these. The next workshop is on the Gold Coast on the 21st of this month at Varsity Lakes. It's $275. So that's one of the prizes. But if you can't come to that, and you can have a choice, I think what we've done is give you a choice. We've just released 6 by 20 to 30 minute modules on franchising. So I've just sort of done a glossary over here, but we've put together 6 modules all about franchising. At the end, you will not be a franchise expert, but you'll know a heck of a lot more than you probably know anywhere else. So these are $480. So whoever wins the prize can have a choice of coming to the workshop, which is a live event, or there's the online workshop, and then, as I say, it's $480.
Excellent. Superb. All right. Who wants to win either one of those? I know I do. Excellent. All right. So we've got our way of drawing it, our extra special way of drawing it, called our Wheel of Names. So all of your names are entered there, and we do have a rule here that in order to win it, you actually have to be here. So if you've disappeared, well, you will never know that you've won unless someone has told you, and it'd be redrawn. So let's see who our lucky winner is for either of those two prizes. You get the choice as to which one you want. And the winner there is Jeff Hill. Are you here, Jeff?
He's not here.
I think he's
I am. I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, good. Good.
Oh, there he is. There he is. There you go, Jeff. All right. Well, there you go. Well, you're either coming to the Gold Coast or you've got an online thing.
I'll be doing the online. Maybe going to the Gold Coast, Nick. Not from Manila.
No, not from Manila.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, let's do the raffle for the people who've attended from the Gold Coast. And we'll give two prizes out.
All right. So Jeff's got the online one and
Yep.
the offline one. Let's see if it's going to land on a Gold Coast person or
Ron Bestwick's got a long way to come.
all right, Scylla. Is Scylla here? Oh, there we are. Are you on the Gold Coast, Scylla?
No, I'm up near Brisbane on the bay side. Yep.
Oh, so you're not far from the coast, are you?
No, about an hour away from Gold Coast.
Oh, so
Well,
you don't have to cross any
an
borders.
8:30. It's an 8:30 start in the morning and finish at 1 o'clock, and I think that's a Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
So it's worth coming down to you to enjoy it. It's good fun.
Okay. Yep.
And
I'll try and
so
do that,
you-
yes.
Okay, that's good.
I should be there as well too, because I've got my little voucher for the
Oh,
little
yes,
course.
yes. Okay, well, that's good. So the people who've won the prizes, if you can just drop me a little note, and I'll
sure.
make sure that we sort out what you need.
Yep, sure, no problems.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, just in chat here, you can
Yep, I'll do that now.
drop it in
for
there, and you can choose Colin's name, so you don't have to give everyone your details there. So thanks, Colin, for an awesome evening tonight. That's certainly given me some food for thought as well too. You know, it is an evening, so thanks for giving up your evening and giving us
Colin.
the value of your wisdom. So let's give Colin a big round of virtual applause.
Great, good man.
All right, and if you want to watch this again, it will be up on YouTube tomorrow. If you go to the Smash Go YouTube channel, it'll be up there. In fact, it's in chat at the moment there. So go and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell beside the subscribe button, and you'll get a notification as soon as it is loaded up there. Next week, we'll be back here again next week with another topic as well. But one thing I would say is that when you leave here tonight, don't just leave thinking this is a great presentation. Think about what's one action you can take, one thing that you can do that will have an impact on your life or your business that'll really help, and then go ahead and implement it. One thing you could do now is click the three little dots on the bottom right-hand side of the chat box. That'll save it to your computer so that you've got all of the links there if you want to visit those again. So thanks once again, everyone, for coming along tonight, and look forward to seeing you all again next week. Have a good evening.